20 people can use one membership. So just buy a membership, create a username and passcode that's original, share it with your friends and family. 20 can log in simultaneously, prisonplanet.tv. And then when they try to censor us on YouTube and places, it won't matter. You have a major fallback position in HD. You can watch it on Roku, Boxy, your cable systems. We're adding new stuff all the time, and we just dominate the charts all over the place. And, that's another question for Dent on trends. If a guy from Texas in 20 years, from nowhere, never took a loan, nothing, can build this organization that reaches about 18 million people a week one way or another with podcasts, YouTube, terrestrial radio, satellite, what's the establishment media going to do? Well, CNN's getting dropped off Dish. CNN's getting dropped off cable systems. But not just because they're too big, too top-heavy, too dinosaur-like. It's also they told us Obamacare was good. So Dent, I want to get with you today into the Dow mini megaphone pattern chart, show that to folks, other key news. But what do you expect on that subject I raised, or do you disagree that there is an anti-growth, anti-freedom, anti-family move in the West that is counterproductive even to the political class? Do you disagree with that, A? Or B, why do you think that is?
Well, I think governments just aren't taking into account some fundamental changes that have already occurred. Women have entered the workforce at rapid rates since the 1950s. When women enter the workforce, it starts to become a dilemma between work, their career, and having kids. The countries that help women the most and have the strongest maternity policies, countries like Norway and Sweden, have some of the highest birth rates in the West. Countries like Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, and the U.S. encourage high immigration or attracted high immigration one way or the other, and the immigrants tend to have more kids. But governments need to realize that as people get affluent, as they move more into urban areas, as women move more in the workforce, you have to encourage and make it easier for women to still have kids. They have to be able to work and have kids. You can't make those work against each other. And there's countries that are doing this. And there's countries that don't have huge deficits like Australia. There's countries like Australia that attract high-quality immigration on purpose. There's ways to do this right. It's just most governments are asleep on this. And like you say, there's too much encouragement, entrepreneurialism. We need to encourage all of this stuff. More kids, more entrepreneurial activity, less bureaucracy, less top-down planning, and the most top-down planned economy in the entire world today, supplanting the USSR, is China. And China is going to have the biggest bubble of all because their government created a bigger bubble than our government has.
Well, they admit that. So what do you expect is going to happen? How do you see China going down? And then I want to get into the Dow mini megaphone pattern that's so important and look at the Dow at 6,000. You've got all these charts at harrydent.com, but history doesn't lie. Patterns don't lie. They're clearly there. How do you expect China to go?
Well, here's what you have to understand what China's done for. People are saying, oh, the communist model actually works when you make it more capitalistic like China. No, economists are clueless on this. China has simply overbuilt everything, 20, 30, 40, 50%. Infrastructures, real estate and housing, industrial capacity. China has moved people from rural to urban areas. That is a natural thing, but not at the rate. China's economy is on steroids. They have overbuilt. I've calculated they pretty much overbuilt their economy for 15 years out and created the greatest bubble in real estate in modern history. When this thing crashes, there's going to be 220 million people with no skills moved in from rural areas who've been just building stuff for nobody. When that bubble stops, they're going to have no work. They're not even legal citizens in these cities, only back in the rural areas, and they've already paved those over. This is going to be the biggest disaster in modern history. And Alex, what I think it's going to prove wrong on these economists who are praising the China model as the new state-driven capitalism, it's going to prove that governments can't top-down manage an economy. It's the free market democratic system that have become so wealthy. And China is violating that, and they're going to prove this model, their new model, wrong.
Well, that's right. History is totally clear on that. And I love how they call it state-run capitalism. They have another name for it. It's called fascism.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, It is top down. It's crony capitalism. In the Communist Party, it's just like the mafia or something. Whoever knows the politicians gets favored by them. They get the deals. The politicians encourage all this overbuilding, and then they encourage the developers not to cut prices, and the developers encourage clueless, affluent Chinese to buy condos that are empty. They don't even try to rent them out. They just buy them. And the government and developers try to guarantee they'll go up. Well, developers are cutting prices. That's the first sign. They are cutting prices up to 40%.
Well, I was about to say, how do you build, tens of millions of units? I mean, just whole cities of empty 50-story, 60-story condos, and there's not even grocery stores for 15 miles away and no roads. It is insane asylum level.
It is. This is so obvious, Alex. But economists don't see it. Well, China's growing at 8-12% a year. I tell people, look at China's stock market where they don't measure growth, they measure profit. That's what stocks do. When you overbuild, you have high fixed costs, high debt loads, and you're unprofitable. China's stock market crashed 70% more than ours in 2008, had a feeble rally into early 2010, and has been going down ever since as near its lows. The stock market is saying our economy stinks, and it does. Now, when real estate and all the speculation in real estate collapses, the affluent are going to lose wealth at a rate that nobody's seen. And the affluent people, the top 10% of people in China who are buying all this real estate, they control 60% of the wealth and high amounts of income. When the affluent go down, China's going to go down. And this is going to be one of the biggest surprises of the next several years.
What about the Dow mini megaphone pattern? We're going to put that on screen for TV viewers, but describe it for radio listeners.
Yeah, put that up, because we talked the last few times I talked about a bigger megaphone pattern where you have each bubble goes higher, but each crash goes lower. Well, the same pattern's happening here near term. Since June, each high in the market's gone a little higher, but each low has gone radically lower. So we're at a critical point here in the markets. We had this correction, this sharp correction into October 15th, but then a surprisingly even sharper move back up. I call these the markets on crack. When you have this much stimulus and highly leveraged speculation by traders and stuff, the market just crazy. It just goes up, 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 and then it makes these violent moves. It kills the everyday investor. The market's at a critical point. With the top part of this little mini megaphone pattern, just a little above it, which is typical at the end, we're either going to go back down to the lower side, which would be about 15,500 in the Dow, or if we don't make a new low in the next month, I'm saying by mid-December is my decision point. If we don't see a new low in the Dow, like 15,500 or so by early to mid-December, then this market's probably going to go push up one more time, and our target would be around 19,000 on the Dow, and that's because the final resistance would be the old high on the NASDAQ.
Sure.
Back in 2000, it 5,050, and that's about 7 to 8% higher. So stocks are either going to go 7 to 8% higher in the next couple of months, but if they break down about 12%, then this bubble is over.
And then that's what our entire fiat economy is based on. I hear some people calling to talk radio. I talk to folks on the street. They say, I don't care if Obama's bankrupting coal power plants. I don't care if the stock market goes down. I don't own stock. They don't know they get electricity from those plants. They don't know companies are running and expanding and hiring people off their stock price. What's going to happen to kind of the trust fund kids, the yuppies, the trendies, also blue-collar workers that don't care about these? I mean, what's going to happen when this comes crashing down? I expect people to just go crazy.
Well, Homer Simpson already got hit. The housing crisis, they peaked. The average household peaks at age 46. We hit that in 2007. We predicted that 20 years before, that by 2007, our economic momentum after that would turn down. It did. Governments are just filling that up with free money, which is crazy. But Homer Simpson's already been hit hard. Underwater mortgages, wages have been declining, adjusted for inflation, since 2000, for a long time. It's the top 20%, the college-educated, low unemployment people, and these 20% own all the financial assets like stocks. Most people own a home, but most people don't own that much stocks. When this stock market crashes, it's going to hit the affluent. And it's going to hit them much harder than it hit Homer Simpson, because they're so invested in this bubble and in real estate and stocks. So, and
they're very haughty and very arrogant. You know, they make fun of the old timers that would put their money in their mattress or bury gold in the back 40. Well, you know what? Those old folks ended up being in a good place, once the Depression hit, and actually got richer. But it's the trendies that end up jumping out of buildings.
Yes, exactly. And the government has rigged the markets, by putting interest rates at zero short term and zero adjusted for inflation long term. They're saying money is free. That means people borrow, they're not going to buy bonds, so they forces them into the stock market. It allows traders and hedge funds and financial institutions to lever 30 to 51 at low cost, and that just feeds this bubble.
And then they make money just off of the trades.
It has to burst. It's not inflation we should worry about or hyperinflation. It's this bubble bursting because the government has deliberately created another bubble to keep the wealthy spending, because they're the only people that will spend, and wealthy people peak later around early 50s, which is about now. So we see the wealthy going off a cliff naturally, and we see this bubble bursting hitting them because they own all these way overvalued financial assets.
That's right. Absolutely right. This is a fact. Just strap yourselves in. Mercedes and Dan for the guests. Then we'll go to Matt and Chuck and Jay after he leaves us, all these Obama supporters. We've got our reporters in Ferguson to give us a report at the bottom of the next hour. Let's go to Mercedes in Oregon. You got a question for Mr. Dent. Go ahead.
Yes, I was listening, and I take real issue with any statements claiming that people have to work until they're 75. That, to me, is an insane statement because, and I'll tell you, the minute that Alex Jones started speaking out and standing up for all of us, for himself and for all of us, his family, this was on its way out, okay? People got to understand that. We are awaking. We're making changes. We're doing it on a conscious and unconscious level now. All this horrible stuff that you guys are seeing is because it's on its way out, okay?
Well, ma'am, let me just stop you for a minute. Let me just stop because I want to quantify what you're saying. Listen, he's saying with the amount of entitlements, with what's been done, with all the free stuff given away to big corporations, but also poor people, it's created debt bubbles that even if you work till 75, you're not going to be able to basically retire. We've created an impossible fraud living on future generations. So he doesn't want you to work till you're 75. He's saying that that's a mathematical fact of what has been developed. And sorry, you didn't have 3 kids, so there isn't a big enough economy now for you to be able to do that. I mean, this is just how it works. But I'm going to skip this network break. This is so important. I want to give her time. Quantify for me. Talk to me like I'm 5 years old, Mercedes. What are you saying here? You're saying we're going to beat this system. We're going to change it. We're going to whatever. I mean, explain to me. Because their answer is bring in austerity, and so you'll be willing to live with less. That's the bureaucrats' answer, and then punish everybody, well, like with Obamacare for the overspending, which is, worse than fascism. I don't even know what you call this. What are you quantifying here? I mean, what are you trying to say?
Okay, so look, you've already pointed out the fraud. It's a fraud, okay? So patterns, projections, all this stuff based on fraud. Therefore, we replace the fraud with a real economy. And this is where other people come into play, like Karen Hudes. She's been talking about restoring the economy on its basic level. What is the money based on? She's saying gold, and it's there. We can make this change without having to go into war because that is what everybody wants. I mean, it's so fraudulent. It's so big. Don't you understand?
No. Listen, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate your call. I want to get Mr. Dent's take on this, but listen. They've made the decision that old people are crud and that babies are crud, euthanize everybody. That's going to be the real solution that Bill Gates is getting us ready for and the left's getting everybody ready for. Okay? We have to start valuing our parents again. We have to start valuing being savers again. We have to start valuing our heroes, being trailblazers and inventors again. I don't want to blame the general public, but on average, we've gotten pretty decadent and soft, okay? Now Dent can disagree, but I want to get his take on this. He's just talking about what they're already getting everybody ready for. Is there a way out of this or a way to mitigate it and not make it as rough as it's going to be? Because I can tell this is scaring people. What do you take from what she said?
Well, Mercedes, I hear what you're saying. It's just, here's the number. $67 trillion in unfunded Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security entitlements promised to people at a time when the economy is going to slow down naturally because the baby boom has peaked in spending.